Facility Subcommittee meeting for Tuesday, July 26th, it's 1:30. And please let the record show that Vice Mayor Gus Walter, our chair, is absent today. He's out of town. Our city manager, assistant city manager are present, as well as myself, Joe Paul. So move on to public comments. At this time, members of the public may comment on any matter not listed on this agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Would anybody like to address something not on the agenda? Michael, any hands?
There's no one attending the meeting virtually at this time. So unless there's hands in the meeting room, then we do not have any at this time.
Okay. So seeing none, we'll move on to communications. David, any communications?
No communication, Chair.
Okay. Move on to item 4, approval of minutes, the June 28, 2022 draft minutes. I reviewed them. They look good to me. Any changes?
No change recommended.
So I will go ahead and move that we approve those minutes. Okay, so the minutes are stand approved. Move on to item 5, new items for discussion. We'll start with item A, discussion of Cherry Creek easement. David.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This item was requested to be agendized based on communication from both the leasing for the Cherry Creek Village property and the adjoining properties that are represented here, Ms. Marianne Brigham, and I think also represented her neighbor Martha McLean.
Yes, actually, there's 12 people that were
Okay.
kind of representing, but that's beside the point, right?
Uh,
I'm here most of this.
The easement, it's been researched by city staff, including our city engineer, based on a fairly recent title report. We initially looked at a title report that was prepared back in 2008, and there was a more recent title report dated 2018. Both of those reports identify that there is an easement that appears to be put in place back in, I think, as early as 2009 to facilitate access to the 2 parcels. I think it will be 1 parcel in the future that we refer to as Cherry Creek Village. The property has been for a long time planned for affordable housing, even prior to the city's ultimate ownership or purchase of the property by an affordable housing developer, and then subsequently by the housing successor agency. And we've been partnering with what was Wall's House for a number of years on utilizing the property again for temporary shelter. And since then, the affordable housing project got approved. Really, the underlying zoning was in place to support the project. The major entitlement really was design review of the project. So there was no like a conditional use permit or other type of entitlement from the city. It was really just reviewing the design. And as part of that design review, the project was circulated amongst all the affected agencies, including the fire district, where there needed to be assurances for future development of the property that there was emergency vehicle access. And so that was kind of a minimum requirement, was to ensure that for this project, because of the density on the number of units and the length of the property or width of the property, that there was alternate means of ingress and egress. The conditions of approval for the design review just reflect ensuring that there is at a minimum that we refer to as the EVA or emergency vehicle access provided for with the condition that requires that if the back driveway is gated, that the knock box provided for emergency access by the fire department. And that's a pretty common condition. They just want to ensure if there are lock gates that they have access course, they will use all means necessary to protect property and life, including removing any fences if needed, but they obviously they want to be able to move quickly. So the condition really that I think we're all kind of referencing here is in regards to the EVA, which again was intended to serve as the kind of a minimum health and safety requirement to ensure that that access was provided. Kind of subsequent to it, the construction of the project and looking more closely at the underlying language in the easement, it was determined that it provides additional rights for the Cherry Creek Village property, and that includes, and I'll just state it from the easement itself. It's a non-exclusive easement for all purposes, including but not limited to ingress, egress, and public and private utilities. So that's the way the easement's written. And again, it looks like it was put in place some time ago, but it was grant deeded to the city back in actually 2009. So it's been in place for quite a while. And so I think the concern is about two adjoining property owners and how do you address kind of operation of that easement. So some of that is based on the easement language itself, but some of it's also worked kind of on the basis of what you call neighbors working together, for lack of a better legal statement. So Chair, I'll kind of leave it at that and just provide if you have any questions, if there's any comments you'd like to make at this point, and I'm happy to elaborate further in so much as my expertise allows.
Well, thank you for that. Did you have something, Kevin?
Oh, I just want to mention Vanessa's here too, so.
Okay.
Oh, and so to let the record reflect that our interim city engineer, Vanessa Apadakis here, she did undertake a review of the easement, and I think that was out of concerns during some of the construction activities, and actually helped the sunshine a little bit, some of the language that was provided for in that easement that was in an attachment to the title report.
Great. Well, thank you for that report. Okay, I'd like to open it up. Would anybody like to address this item?
I was assuming that you would like to speak first. Go. Okay.
Maria, please.
You can please state your name for the record.
Yes, Mary Ann Brigham. What I've been going through the past, first of all, I'm always have been a big proponent of affordable housing. I mean, you guys all know that. I've helped bring affordable housing many times, and I like this project. There's nothing wrong with this project. All of us neighbors for the past year have been eating dirt and sand and dust, and every time one of the neighbors would complain and come to me and talk to me about it, I would say, look, 24 people are going to get apartments, and that's a big thing in this town, and we need it. But I also gave them copies of the planning commission resolution that approved it. And whenever they came to talk to me about this or that, I would always go back to this. Because this is basically our legal document. So the first thing that I wanted to bring up today was page 2. Item number 2. This proposal will not be detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, and general welfare of the persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed project. I don't have a question or a concern about the easement. In fact, before we knew that existed, from 1950, before there were any houses there, before the church was there, when the little grocery store was up on the corner. When I was asked about it, and I'm kind of tucked in the corner, this doesn't affect me as much as it affects Martha. It affects her tremendously. She's walking with a cane, she's in a walker. I went to see her yesterday and we chatted for a while, and she's starting to measure the windows to put cardboard on the windows So that when cars start coming through during the winter or at night, that her whole house isn't flooded with car lights. This is gonna affect her very, very, very much. But again, she also willingly, before we knew the other one existed, she said, no, I don't have a problem. That's what neighbors do. I mean, if they need access for fire or whatever, you just do that. There was never an argument about that. I guess the argument that we have now is that even the documents like these, which were the final maps and stuff that we were given, show this as just an EDA access. You guys would like one back there. And so I have for the last year been telling people in the neighborhood, I said, well, don't worry about it. Because it's just gonna be a locked gate, and we have to supply that just so that fire engines, although no fire engine could ever make that turn, even if they wanted to, but an emergency vehicle could probably, if they backed up and went a couple times, they could probably get in. So there we have it, you know, all this time I've been telling them this. And then I get the notice that they are going to actually have an open gate system with kids and everything else. Well, I'd like you all to kind of just close your eyes and think about this. They're gonna come out of that gate, kids on bicycles. You were very clear with that you wanted children to be able to go down to town and drive. Okay, so they're gonna go out that gate, they're gonna start down the driveway. The first thing they're gonna see on the left-hand side is broken down fence with just a bunch of junk in it. That would be enticing to any child. If they can get past the pit bull, which is often ours. The pit bull seems to be the favorite pastime of this particular pit bull is children on bicycles. Now, the next one down, although pit bull likes me, but not much else. The next house down, actually, before they even hit Time to Drive, has a pit bull and a chihuahua. Now that pit bull also likes me, but I know how to give them treats. They're always out. So that's a problem. Then you hit the street, and I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Tarman Drive has become the way that all of our houseless folks and some of our problem folks go up and down the boulevard because they don't want to deal with the police. So we deal with them on a daily basis. You know, they're just nuts. And I've had a few issues. I don't even want to do that. But all right, so then we also have a group of folks that live in a house 2 doors down that seem to be really enamored with the high school girls. And so I'm thinking, okay, great. You know, all these girls are gonna be funneled right down into that little problem area. And so we would probably need more police presence, definitely, if you're gonna do that. There's gonna have to be somebody out there part of the time. Parking problems. My neighbor has 7 cars. My other neighbor has 2 cars. The house next door, which is the where the Vineyard Management Group has 2 houses, which is right next door. There's probably about 22 young guys living there. They have, I'm guessing, maybe about 15 cars. There is no room on the streets to park at all, period. I have had to wait a number of times in my driveway to calmly ask people to please move their vehicles so we could get in and out of my own driveway. So now this is going to add something even more to it. So I think if you're looking at safety of children, wrong path, wrong place to send them. We've got new sidewalks on the boulevard. Why? You know, also, I don't understand why the road in front of the entrance hasn't been striped in some way. It's a straight shot when you're coming from south to north and you're going by there. It's very visible, that driveway. It's not a problem. And you could just say, okay, we're going to stripe it. And when you pull out of that driveway, if you have a problem with that curve, which I would think you would, then have it be a turn that is only a right-hand turn coming out. I see that often, in a lot of different places. So what? Or maybe stripe it in some other way. You guys are better at that than I am. But there certainly could be some kind of issue with that so that it could be a more attractive way to get in and out. But putting more pressure on Tarman is really not a good idea. If indeed, another thing about the police presence thing, not too long ago, I mean, we had knifing things happening in the little camp they had over there. And there's people running up and down the street, blood. I wish one of the policemen were here. This is the area where almost all the police calls come from in Tarman Drive. It's right in that little section. In fact, I've made a few. So I get that. If indeed you do decide to go forward with this concept, then we're going to have to take a step back. And we're going to have to get together, the attorney that we've all hired and you guys, attorney, are going to have to come up with some kind of a maintenance agreement. That'll have to be approved by our attorney, which I imagine will be mostly your responsibility because you will be traveling it so much more than any of the rest of us will. So I would hope that our group will get some type of a maintenance agreement. Well, actually, I would demand that. A maintenance agreement on the right of way, plus the property tax update. You'll have to pay your fair share of the property tax. Whatever share compared to what you use it, that will be your responsibility. The police presence we already talked about. I think this should also trigger this whole thing going back to the planning commission. Because, I mean, their second statement was that they didn't want it to be a burden on the surrounding properties. Well, this is not just a burden, this is ridiculous. After a year of sucking dust, now you want us to suck it for the rest of our lives. That's particularly wrong with Martha and the property in front of it and the property beside it. Like I said, I'm kind of in the back, but this is not something we do to neighbors, so that's just disgusting to me. And I think it should also trigger going back to city council for public input. I think that's only fair. I don't want to be unfair. I like the project. I've been watching it every day. Well, the guy that was cutting the trees down was cut more down than he was supposed to, but when his sawzall broke, I actually lent him my sawzall. When they didn't have a way to put playground equipment in, I was an hour late for work because he was unloading playground equipment and blocked my driveway. I could not get in or out. So I thought, oh, what the hell? I didn't call and complain to the city because playground equipment is important. And I called into work and said, I'm going to be an hour late. I can't get out. So I think we really need to talk about this some more, and we need to do it logically. And I'm like I said before, I'm not arguing about the fact that there is an easement. We all were willing to give that easement. And I'm still willing to be a good neighbor, but this is just untenable on so many levels.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else want to address the committee? Did you have something?
Well, I think the primary thing from our perspective is the safety issue. Absolutely is a safety concern. That this be the safer option
I would
rather, can I?
Yes, you can.
The safer option in terms of traffic flow and the children's safety. And that is because of the speed on South Cloverdale Boulevard and coming in and out of Cherry Creek Village, which has always been an issue. There have been a number of accidents here. So that's really the overlying concern that we have. And so that part of our process in getting people settled in is going to be us taking them on a route with safe routes to school, through the back way through Tarman, having people come in the front and out the back. So it's really more of a one-way path. And that will help people reduce the issues related to the speed that's coming down South Cloverdale Boulevard, which is, you know, anybody who's driven on that knows people are going pretty fast. So it's very difficult to pull out and not, you know, get hit from both directions. So coming in one way and out the other is really obviously the safer way to do this for everybody concerned, but in particular, we don't want to encourage the kids to go out in front. So that's really our position, and that's why we decided to do this after much discussion. And it's also, you know, the fact that this issue was raised when we were in construction phase brought it to our attention that we actually had an easement. And so as a result of that, we looked at it from a risk assessment perspective and liability, and not wanting to, now that we've been notified that this exists and being able to use it so as to reduce and mitigate our risk is really our bigger concern. So that's where we're at.
Have you thought about,
I'll give everybody a chance to speak, hold your questions, but you'll have another chance.
Okay.
Colleen, are you done? Okay, would anybody else like to address the committee on this time? Okay, Mary.
I'm just wondering if you guys even consider the option of the striping in front of the building as opposed to going on the back. Like, when you're coming from the south to the north, there is no problem. You can see it. I mean, there is no blind spot if you're coming north or south to north. So you could easily have the driveway striped so that you would go to the right. That way there would be no problem with coming and going. How about a crosswalk? If there's no crosswalk there, many of the people that are living there, who I also know there's a bunch of people in Tarman, have storage units across the street, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of your people who have the same. Right. So there's no crosswalk anywhere near there. If there was a crosswalk with on the Boulevard, just south of the driveway, or no, just slightly south of the driveway, be very visible. You could put a stop sign if you wanted to, which would slow people down and which would make the safety issue much less of an issue. I would worry about the kids, especially going into Charmin way more than going out on the Boulevard. Just purely because of what they're facing when they go down, and they will not be. But I guess you could probably do that if you had somebody that would be there during that whole period of time. Somebody that would actually be making sure that the kids got out of the driveway and up towards the Boulevard more. If you had walkers, say, that would work. And it also brings up another thing in that insurance. We would expect you to carry a heavy insurance policy for all of the people that are leaving your property until they get out of the driveway, out of private property. Just because Mark is worried sick that, like, when the neighbor pulls out of that blind spot to come onto that walkway, which is a blind spot, and he comes out of there and his kid, she does not want to be responsible for that. And I don't blame them. It's private property with an easement. Granted, you have the easement. So there are probably 3 really important documents that would have to be drawn up that would make her not responsible for something coming off you guys' property. Sounds fair to me.
So, in the sake of time, I mean, there's a lot of good ideas that were presented, a lot of concerns that were expressed. Certainly, there's more work that needs to be done on trying to come to some consensus. I'm not sure, David, maybe, I don't know if Jose's weighed in on the legalities of the easement versus what the planning commission. Marianne pointed out some of the comments that are within the planning commission's approval, as well as, and I guess my other question would be, does the easement supersede the planning commission's recommendation? I mean, there's legalities that come into play. In other words, the easement is recorded, it's a legal document. I don't think the city council or the planning commission can make it more restrictive, but I don't know that for sure. And that's the question I have. We probably should get that answered from a legal standpoint, because otherwise there's, even if it went back to the planning commission or to the council, there's
What is the
nothing.
jurisdiction on that easement? I was under the impression it was a Sonoma County recorded document.
Well, because the Sonoma County clerk recorder is responsible for obviously ensuring you know, there's a proper place for recreation to reflect its history. So that it is a legal document that's recognized by Sonoma County as, you know, for all intents and purposes, a legal document. Now, what it does is it gives certain rights to property owners to those easements. And so, you know, I think the question being asked and also the question today is there a mechanism which to, if you want to say, perfect the easement, or, you know, which often you use that terminology when there's a defect. I don't know if there's a defect in the language. I think what there's an ask is, can there be imposed additional requirements on that easement? And usually what that requires is the easement holder to them, they agree to additional provisions.
Right.
By and support of all the parties. And that would be something that would require legal review, right? Because typically maintenance agreements are done at the time that the easement is recorded, not after the fact. And you know, liability is a complicated issue. It's usually addressed at the time that there's an incident and there's some assignment.
It's not like.
Right, and there's a part of the development. And this was when it was targeted and was developed, this was the easement, that's when it was perfected. So my understanding is that this would, if something was to be modified around that easement, it would have to be approved by Sonoma County, because in essence, it was part and parcel to the development.
Well, that was
Because
the question.
otherwise those properties would have been landlocked, and it went from South Cloverdale Boulevard all the way through to Tarvin. And at some point, I guess, the easement was blocked. We're not making a big deal out of that. But
Oh, it was, yeah, that was way before me. Yeah.
well,
It
anyway,
was a locked gate is what it was.
but that was the
Keep
block.
it back on track though, you know, it's really what can we do to
Can I
rectify
ask a
the
question?
situation.
Right.
Well, I just want to finish my thought.
Sure.
I think really some suggestions were made about maybe taking another look at using Cloverdale Boulevard by maybe crosswalks, striping, a right turn only out of the complex. I think those should really be looked at from an engineering standpoint, where maybe our interim city engineer could take a look at that with you. I mean, I'd like to see us come to a good neighbor, workable solution to this. And let's not get into this legal stuff, because I really don't think from a legal standpoint, the city's going to be able to take any action. I think it's pretty much what it is. Yes, Mary.
Nobody is arguing the validity of that whether or not the easement is valid. That's not a question. It's whether or not this is valid. The actual resolution that was approved by the planning commission. And it's just like access. It says quite clearly that it's supposed to be an emergency vehicle access easement over the driveway. And then it goes on and on about exactly what that is. So you're right. I mean, it is a legalese, but I would expect no less that the city would treat us as property owners no less than you guys were treated in this very document. So I don't understand why the city can get all these things and the people who actually own the property and who have been extremely cooperative through this whole year would suddenly just be thrown to the wolves, especially Mark. And I think that goes beyond legalities, and it talks to what the actual premise of this document states. And like I said, no argument on easement. And indeed, you say you're not going to go after that now, but what are we going to rip down? There's two other issues I would just like to briefly state. So what, if you want that 25-foot easement, do you want us to start ripping buildings down? Because that's from 1950, before there were any buildings even there. There was no church, there was no homes back there. There was a little grocery store on the corner, And then the church got built and the easement was just to get at those things which are long gone. And that gate, the Spartans, when they owned it, when I first bought it, they said that gate has been locked for years. So we're taking a 75-year-old easement and trying to imply that it is now the same thing, which it is not. And if indeed you are going to open that permanently, then I think you're gonna have to get rid of that basketball hoop, because there's nobody on God's green earth that's gonna let you have a basketball hoop in the middle of a driveway. I mean, that's so absurd, it's chilling to me. If people are going to come in that way or out that way, it's blind. And any kid losing a ball and bouncing over, there's a 6-foot fence on each side. The drivers in or out would be completely blind to those kids. That would never pass any kind of safety inspection I've ever seen. But again, yes, I would like some type of a venue where we can bring this to some kind of a conclusion that would be, and I quote, not detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, and general welfare of the persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed project. So please think about Martha and those people that have lived there for a long time, who are suddenly going to be thrown into this pit. So that's what I would like. So can you conclude with some way that we're going to solve it?
You know, I wish I had a crystal ball to come up with that, unfortunately, but that's where I'm going to look at David to see. I'd like to see if we can maybe get our staff. I'd like to have Jose engage in that conversation, so we know from the legal standpoint what the parameters are, as well as our city engineer to take a look. Are there alternative ways to make it a safe egress out of that complex? I think those are valid things that can take a look at, because even going out through the easement and around, I question how many will actually go that way. You can educate them, but I know kids, and I know them on their bikes, and they're going to go the shortest way, and they're going to go. So the reality is, we can say what we say, but they're going to do what they're going to do. So we really should take a look at recognizing that the Cloverdale Boulevard needs to be viewed. How do we make that a safe egress?
And Chair, I think your direction on that is on target, because I think we should always be looking at opportunities where we can improve the safety conditions for our residents, and certainly looking at the conditions of exiting from the driveway to make it as safe as possible, regardless of the nature of the easement and what it's going to provide for in terms of access. So I think that's an area where staff can constructively put energy to identify what are kind of improvements or modifications that might be workable for the driveway location to support, you know, the safety of the residents and the safety of our motorists and bicyclists as well. So I think that's an area I can work with Vanessa. Will probably need to, you know, look at hiring or obtaining a scope of work from someone like W-Trans or another traffic safety consultant to look at what are some options for improving you know, traffic safety in the vicinity of the project. So I think that's on target. The you know, the easements tend to be you know, very legally oriented documentation. We would certainly can at your direction have ask our attorney to take a look at it. Again, I think your comment that sending it back to commission without that would not necessarily be beneficial without at least some kind of overview of what the easement entails. And so I think that's the necessary first step. I think it's important to be said that, you know, fencing, gates, etc., between property owners are not required in really any mechanism. It's again, it's the old saying is good fences make good neighbors, but they're not required, though we use them judiciously in California. So it's just always something to be think about. It's if there was not a gate or a fence there, it's not required. But it was, again, the condition was written to ensure that if there was a gate there, that it provided for emergency access. So that was the premise for the condition.
Yes, Marion.
I would just like to request that I be notified. A lot of the residents felt really left out of this particular decision. They were never notified that things had changed. I remember I was always told that it was just going to be a locked gate for emergency vehicle access. This was a surprise to me too. So that would be my one request, is that we actually be notified when the meetings are going to be, so that we can either be there ourselves or send a representative, which would kind of make sense to me too.
So just on this EDA discussion, that was, as I see it, and according to our attorneys, that was a redundant layer. We had an easement, that was a redundant layer just to ensure that emergency vehicles would have access through that easement. And so I just want to make sure that we're kind of all clear on that was just something that's in the resolution, because you wanted to make sure that there was a Knox box and that we wouldn't lock emergency vehicles out.
That's correct, Colleen, because again, operationally, the gate could be locked, and if the Knox box was not being provided, could be an impediment for vehicle safety, and the fire code requires that there be an alternative means of access. So in this case, that's a minimum health and safety condition,
Right.
Which, again, if there was no gate there, it was not planned, it probably wouldn't even be necessary to have a condition
Right.
requiring a Knox box.
And then lastly, I wanted to say that these other suggestions are great. Having a stop sign up where the intersection is toward it on industrial is an excellent idea. That was something that we had discussed, but it would be supplemental. It wouldn't be in place of. I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. We're not suggesting at all that if there's a striping, stop signs, whatever, that then we are agreeing to abandon that easement. There is no way we're abandoning that easement.
Right, and nobody's suggesting.
Nobody's suggesting that.
No, nobody's suggesting that.
I just want to make sure that we're clear.
Colleen,
There
I
was
just
some
want to be real
discussion
clear
about
too, that what I'm asking is see if we can come to a consensus that we could all move forward with in agreement. Now, that may not be possible. Okay, but until all the ideas are laid out
Right.
and we take a healthy look at it and talk about it, I don't think, so if we can just keep an open mind and let the engineer and the city staff look at different options
Right.
and present them and then have that conversation, but nobody's asking you to give up the easement. I didn't hear that at all.
Yeah, and we're not arguing about the easement. That was, in fact, before we knew it existed, we offered it to you guys. We said that it was fine, that you use it for a locked gate up there. And when there was a fence there, if you remember, Colleen, there wasn't a fence up there for a long time, and we were having a lot of trouble. Thievery, gas stolen out of cars, you name it. And a couple people were caught, and they were from your little group of people that were living over there at the time. And when we talked about it, we added that fence. And when that solid fence was across there, which could have stayed there, I would have been happy with that, wouldn't have mattered to me. There was no problems. We had no problems with thievery, no gas siphoning, none of that. It cut it all out. So you were right about that, just finishing that fence off all the way down. So when there is a fence there, we can be comfortable in our neighborhood. Without that fence there, we will not be comfortable, especially Martha.
Yeah, and the fencing was important, and it cost our development a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not trying to be facetious here or sarcastic, but we have gotten absolute acknowledgement for the improvement that we made in terms of that fencing from anybody.
It's not an improvement to us.
Well, see, that's
See,
where we kind of.
we were finding the fence kind of exactly the way it
Not
was.
to, I don't mean
I'm
to
ready.
be rude.
Yeah.
Before you leave, I just want to kind of summarize. So what I hear is the next step will be, first, I think we need to get a legal opinion so that we can at least discuss whether this should go back to the planning commission or the council for further discussion. I don't think that would accomplish anything, because I don't feel that they're gonna have the legal authority to make any modifications, so. But we need to get that clarified. I think Mary Ann brought out some things about crosswalk, potentially a stop sign, maybe a right to and only out of the complex. That are striping, those are things I'd like to see us look at and to talk and bring us back together and let's have that conversation with options. And maybe with a little luck, we can all say, you know, I can live with this, let's try it. Keep in mind, you could always change it. If
We're
it
not
doesn't-
negotiable, this is not negotiable. So Joe, just so we're clear, this is
What's
not
not
negotiable.
negotiable?
That we are going to use that easement. Okay, no amount of city council involvement or pressure that with implied threats of legal action are gonna change that. Our main concern is for those kids and the traffic going up and down. So we're not gonna spend any more time on this.
I'm not
okay? We're
disagreeing.
not spending any more time. We have wasted way too much time on this.
Colleen, you know, I'm sorry to feel that way. First of all,
That's just,
yeah, Colleen, I'd just like to finish. First of all, we're on the same team. We want the kids safe. David made that real clear. All the suggestions that we lay out are just consideration, open-minded consideration, like we do with everything else. If it works, we move forward. If it's not going to make the kids safe, if it is a problem, by God, we don't.
yeah,
So
so,
we're not trying to take away anything. We're trying to make sure it's a safe issue.
okay.
I'm really sorry you feel that way because we're not on the.
So much energy on this.
Well, this is my first discussion on it, so I don't know where the energy is coming from. I think we have a plan and we're gonna at least take a look. You do what you need to do. I'm not suggesting you not open it up. I think you recognize that's not gonna be well received by your neighbors, but that's between you and them. We're gonna look from the safety aspect.
I'm really sorry that people bought pieces of property with 25-foot easement in their front yard. That's not our business.
I think Jessica, you have a comment?
Yeah, I really feel it's unfortunate to spend so much resources and time on something like this. It's insinuated in the plan because there is listed in the original plan for the planning commission that there's emergency vehicle access. Isn't it bound legally to what the description of an emergency vehicle access is?
Well, I
Or
think
does it
that's,
change?
again, that's the minimum health and safety.
Right, so you gave us the answer over and over again, so why are we still having to run it by lawyers to see if there's anything that can be done when there is no question that it can be done? Because it's insinuated in the planning commission's approval that there is an EVA on the property, and we all know legally what that means. And it's so, and I like David's idea of having options, if we can do a stop sign, we continue to use, you know, the target area, kids will have the option, the more rebellious ones won't use it, but the ones who want to be safe and go to Target Park can use that, you know, area. I don't see why, and, you know, Joe, you said maybe, or maybe Mary, not all the children will go the safe route, well, maybe less, you know, maybe it'll even out and you guys won't have as much traffic flow from children as you might assume you might. But I still feel like you do a really good job representing your neighbors, and we're gonna do all we can to represent our children at Church Community College.
And I would kind of feel bad if I thought that I didn't care about safety of the children, because I do. What the neighborhood is going on and on about to me, no end, is that first statement that I read when I first sat down. That this proposal will not be detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, and general welfare of the persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed project.
Including the children.
Including the children, but also including us, my neighbors. So I think that's why we can say there's absolutely no room for negotiation. That's kind of not a very pleasant thing. When written it was approved. Now all of a sudden we want to change it. We're not arguing about the easement. We gave that to you before we even knew it existed. So
In discussion, we didn't give us anything. There's so much value.
Chair, if we can, we understand this is a hot topic.
we
Yeah,
didn't
I
give you
just want-
any.
Mary Ann, please.
This topic is not on the agenda, it's really about the evening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to digress any more than I already have, but let's.
Seems like it's a little personal, and that's unfortunate. We're looking at the safety aspect, and that's all I care about.
Exactly.
Okay. So.
Jerry, your direction's clear, we'll work on the scope
And there's a lot of history,
to do a traffic safety evaluation.
there's a lot of history, personal history.
And as well, conduct a legal review, I believe.
Okay,
Not on my side.
all right. All right, well, thank you.
Guys,
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you. Jim. All right, so we got direction on that, and I don't know if that really doesn't really need to happen with the subcommittee. You can have like a little ad hoc, we can have it back to the subcommittee. But I think just getting legal answers. I don't think we,
Until we have a scope
Yeah.
regarding traffic safety improvements, then that might come back.
good, okay. Anything else on that? Okay, so. All right. Okay, so we'll go on to item 5B, update on the police department paint and the dry rot repair. I gotta get that.
I'm preparing a budget amendment for the August 10th council meeting. We have scopes from Fitzgerald, and he said he can start August 22nd, provided that resolution passes on the 10th. We'll be good to go. We have his insurance. He's currently painting the senior center, so he's up to date on all his insurance and all that. So August 22nd is scheduled to start.
And that includes painting the south facing front on Broad Street, as well as the west facing side towards the hall. There's additional cost due to kind of the area under the access bay. We were really kind of targeting the south and west facing sides of the building, including the necessary dry rot repair. There's some dry rot repair work. We also it's going to be kind of a comprehensive proposal that includes treating all the arbors in the plaza.
Yes.
And we started to look at the arbors on the boulevard. There's some additional arbors that I think they are also due, and since they are going to be here, we've asked them to modify the proposal to include those arbors, and so we're looking at that. There may be some of the wood, the yellow cedar is probably may have already passed its prime, so we'll have to look at that and see if we some replacement. But the plan would be to be able to get all the arbors in the plaza, as well as right here in the key portion of the boulevard, treated appropriate with treatment along with the paint.
That's critical because of the fact that if we don't, we're gonna end up having to replace that. Should be very-
The arbors we're going to start after Brad lines.
Yeah.
We're all lined up at the budget amendment.
So funding, how do you plan to bring?
Well, we're gonna look at the impact fees to determine, it's a question of whether the activity is maintenance or if it can be considered an activity that's supportable to use impact fees. Usually impact fees can pay for, new type of, new improvements and new equipment. And the, maintenance is generally prohibited. So we're kind of looking at this and determining, whether the project can be funded in part or in whole impact fees, and if not, we'll look at other funding.
Good. Okay, anything else on that? Excellent. It's long overdue. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I think we'll see some with the restrooms, more time.
The arbors are 1, 2, there's some ones on my.
Kevin, it's Hector.
Yeah, hey, Edgar.
Hey, so we asked Fitzgerald to give us a revised quote.
So you did.
Street. Yeah, to treat the plaza trellises and the one in front of City Hall, which is the one that's it's in pretty bad shape. The rest of the trellises up and down the boulevard were treated a couple of years ago. Just FYI.
One on City, right in front of City Hall, and then across the street from City Hall, looks like it's in bad shape, so.
Okay.
I'll do those two.
Okay, I can get a hold of Fitzgerald.
All right, cool, thank you.
Chair, if there's any more on items 5B and C, if you have a consultant in the audience, Jeff Rubendahl with Fair and Peers. He was here to speak to item 5G, which is the traffic pedestrian safety for the South Cloverdale Boulevard. If you're okay with moving that up.
Absolutely. I didn't know you said, thank you. Yes.
Mike, if you can hear me, could you invite or allow, bring Jeff Rubendahl from Fair and Peers in as a panelist? All right. Jeff, can you hear us okay?
Hello.
Hi, Jeff. Am I okay to
Yes.
share? Okay. So the Public Works Subcommittee in the past has requested that we evaluate traffic safety at the intersection of Fieldberg Avenue and South Cloverdale Boulevard, an area where we recently did some pedestrian improvements, but there was a subsequent traffic collision there involving the pedestrian. And there's concerns that additional improvements may be necessary to support improving that intersection for traffic safety purposes. We work with Fair and Peers on conducting a complete streets assessment, primarily focusing on Austin and Citrus Fair Drive. And during that discussion, there were some technical engineering perspective that was offered relative to pedestrian improvements that could be made at that crossing. And I subsequently asked Jeff if he'd be willing to provide a scope of work to memorialize the tasks that would be necessary to be able to prepare a solution, I think, that would support an enhanced level of pedestrian safety. And so included in your packet is a proposal for traffic engineering assessment design for improvements. And I guess, Jeff, at this point, if you're inclined to maybe just give an overview of your scope of work for Chair and Councilmember Joe Paula.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for having me and being flexible. So what we wanted to do is now that we have a set of improvements at the intersection, countermeasures, I want to compare it to some federal guidance as to how to evaluate based on speed, geometry, and kind of how the intersection operates typically, including looking at lighting and other potential warning devices that if the data supports it, could come in and kind of augment that intersection for a little bit better pedestrian crossing safety. The work itself would just be basically reviewing the design plans, reviewing the data that's available, collecting additional data, and typically just speed is really one of the big inputs there. And then doing a lighting assessment, actually going out there with light meters during nighttime hours and actually seeing where the dark spots are and comparing them with industry standards and kind of coming up with a set of, here's what we found, here's what we recommend to potentially augment or enhance the crossing, and then develop a concept so that we kind of work it through the appropriate review process and see if there's some kind of short-term and a longer-term solution that would address pedestrian safety there.
So, Chair, I think the kind of overview for Ken is really take a look at the current design, the design documents that we had prepared by the engineering firm we retained were provided to Jeff Rubendahl, and that will help inform recommendations to address what are some current FHWA guidelines to really support pedestrian safety at that intersection. And I know in our conversations with Jeff, we had some, I think, some design concepts that would likely come out of that informed process that would support traffic safety. So that, we want to make sure we do the documentation and then go to that design, come up with that design, see if that's going to be, it's supported by the data, but ultimately present it so that that could be something if the council agrees with the design concept, we put it out to bid for construction.
And what's the timeline on this?
Jeff, you want to speak to the timeline for the work?
So collecting data and analyzing the data, we can do it in just a couple of weeks. If we want to wait for school to be back in session, that may add a few weeks to that. But this is, a few months. I don't think we actually developed a detailed schedule, but from data collection, analysis, and coming up with concepts, that's 2-3 months once we're under contract, I'd say. And there's ways to streamline that or kind of make it a little bit more detailed if there's key milestones that we're trying to target.
Yeah, so before I go with my comments, let's see if anybody has any comments. Anybody in our audience? Michael? No.
As of now, we do not have any members of the public in attendance.
Okay, thank you. No comments? Okay, well, I'm just really concerned, and I'll just speak for myself. I asked the chief to provide me the last 10 or so years. We've had several accidents there, fatality, major injury accident, moderate injuries, minor injuries, and a lot of them are at dark, some are during the daylight. It's just, I really am concerned about getting something in place, not just to study, but actually getting some proper lighting in place sooner than later. And as we go through daylight savings time and it starts getting dark earlier, again, I don't want to be in the study process. I want to see something there in place because it is concerning. We had too many accidents at that location and something's driving it. So I think it's important to determine what we need. I'm certainly supportive of that, but I really want to see timing expedited and we get something in place before we go through another winter with hopefully, and I say this word very sincerely, hopefully with rain and of course darkness, we definitely want to have things in place. We spent a lot of money on that intersection and it has not done one bit of good. And so I'm hopeful we come up with a plan that's going to work well as we move forward. So I'm not sure, but I support moving forward with the design. I just like to see it sooner than later and come up with a funding plan so we can make this happen before we have another situation. It's a heavily used intersection, both by school kids, but also by seniors and people just crossing that street. Yeah.
The one thing I would add to that, so we can the analysis and the design is relatively short compared to the duration it takes to order equipment. So if the recommendation is to add streetlights or add a overhead beacon or something other than that, making that decision is probably a month or two's worth of effort. Once ordered, it's several months to get the physical equipment. So that's probably more of the crunch time or the potential issue not having something on the ground sooner. I think it's highly likely that our assessment will show that additional lighting would be needed. We can prioritize that component of our assessment and come up with some kind of short-term, whether it's fixture replacements or other interim improvements that can address kind of the timeliness of lighting or something that's can be in place for a certain amount of time while a more larger assessment of the data can be done. I don't think, we're talking about saving a few months here. I don't think it's going to, this project and effort is not going to drag out more than 2 or 3 months from beginning to complete design. So, but yeah, prioritizing the work on our end to identify those lighting improvements could be done pretty quickly.
Great, thank you.
Well, Chair, yeah, we just wanted to make sure that the subcommittee was supported the proposed scope of work, and it's within my authority. We'll confirm budget, and we can enter into a professional services agreement with Fair and Peers to perform, initiate this work. I can work with our interim city engineer and Jeff on evaluating if there's any interim improvements that we can make now. I know there's been some discussion about the existing lighting that's out there. It may be simple, at least in an interim measure, or putting in a light bulb lighting with greater amount of lumens, possibly. But those are things I want to make sure it fits with the recommendations that Jeff's team is developing in our city engineer. So I think your direction is clear on that. Look at some interim solution, move it forward, but move this project along.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good one.
So David, is that something we could also look at? Cherry Creek area?
Yeah, I'll start with Vanessa on the verification. We'll strategize if we want to have.
They're here, they're doing things,
Right.
and they're so close, and it's obviously an area that needs to be looked at.
Right.
So
Might be a separate scope, but
it may be,
yeah.
but it's certainly an important. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so we'll go back to we'll go back up to 5D, update on parks irrigation. Hector, is that you?
Yes, good evening. So right now, all the parks are looking good. We're still following very strictly stage 4 water reduction ordinance, which is it requires us to reduce the water irrigation usage down to 40%. And the parks are actually looking pretty healthy right now. We're looking forward to soccer season is coming around. And so we are trying to maintain and move water around to make sure that the fields are safe for the kids to use.
And Chair, if I can just elaborate a little bit on Hector did mention that stage 4 water shortage emergency declared by council, and we've really made every effort to meet the conservation requirements. They're 35% under the stage 4 emergency, and irrigation of our parks is one of the most significant consumers of water from public facilities. So that's an area that sees the biggest impact from that meeting that conservation requirement. So what we're seeing, I think why this item was brought to the agenda was what we're seeing. Some of the turf is not the vibrant green color that we often see during the winter months and starts to yellow. There's a couple of strategies that we talked about how to address. One, the water emergency, realizing one, if you water less, it has an impact on turf, and Hector has been trying to manage it using the tools you can as best to meet the target, but also keep the turf alive and as healthy as possible. Recognizing again, it does affect its health, and then looking at the areas and ensuring those areas where they're most heavily utilized are maybe might be irrigated more than non-utilized turf areas, which has aesthetic impacts. But I think the focus has been really on ensuring those areas that are used by our sport groups or leagues, park users, maintaining them as safe spaces. So that's where I think Hector's been putting more energy on, think of the Little League field or the ball field at the city park, for example. Whereas maybe some of the turf areas that are landscape areas and Vintage Meadows may not have as much attention. And then, so that's kind of the logic and the priority of areas and how we're irrigating is trying to again focus on health and safety for our park users. To kind of ameliorate the impacts of the reduced production water, we have been, look, what we did last year, use the water buggy to supplement the park use, and I think that helped out a lot. That manual application is not as easy as turning on the sprinklers, of course, and it's also not as easy to apply it evenly in those areas, because it's, again, it's done manually. So you do get those pockets in areas where they're not doing that supplemental irrigation as much. We prior to last year, we did testing. We've done testing again. We're reviewing those test results, because before we apply the wash water, we just want to make sure it doesn't have any unsafe constituents, because it's not fully treated. And so I think it's a good application, but we want to make sure that water is, there's no concerns relative to, again, using it for our play areas. The other thing that we're looking at is trying to do it as strategic as possible, is reducing irrigation strategically in areas, again, that may not be used for active recreation, that maybe just aesthetic only, and seeing where those can be maybe mulched or utilized wood chips. So we're kind of, it's a subtle replacement of turf areas where feasible, and really relying on Hector to kind of he knows firsthand which areas are more suitable for that. So we're seeing this done incrementally in our parks and landscape areas, as use of a lot more mulch, and as a way to try to again offset that potable use. But water is needed for irrigation. So I just want to provide that additional context for, we've talked a lot about it. How do we address it in a way that minimizes the impact of the turf, supports our youth groups and our park users, but also tries to meet the conservation targets. So we have moving pieces, and it's challenging, I think, from a management perspective. I know Hector, it requires a lot of work to do it, and I think he's been doing a good job and with what the tool he has. Areas that we're also just looking at is will better irrigation controllers, things like that, give us some more tools to be able to better manage our water use. So that's an area we're also just looking at, and I know Hector's been evaluating that too. Some of those control systems are pretty expensive. Looking at opportunities for grants and we want to do it. Upgrade. Ideally, we have smart irrigation control throughout all of our parks. We don't have that yet, but they come with a lot of expensive add-ons that give you that data to help inform your decisions about soil moisture, humidity, and all those kinds of things. But that's just another avenue that we've been kind of working on as part of trying to address the irrigation of our parks and our landscapes.
So I just want to be clear, are you using the back porch water and the water buggy?
Yeah, I don't think, have we used it this year yet?
No, not yet. We've been, I was actually going to talk to Vanessa to see if maybe she has a contact or some resources to see if they can help us maybe determine this and look at just another set of eyes to look at this water test results. Just to make sure that, like David mentioned earlier, to make sure that we're applying, when we apply the water with our water buggy, it's safe for the kids and everybody, animals and everything. So that's the next step. Once we get some once we get some answers here on this results, water results, then yeah, we can definitely move forward to start utilizing the buggy.
Yeah, we just got those test results back this week. So.
Well, that's good news. Good. Any questions from anybody in the boat? No? Okay. Well, I want to encourage you to continue to do that and get that answer, because we really want to have that water buggy in use, and try to maintain the parks so the kids have play fields for ball games, etc. The best we can. So.
Good, thank you. Yeah, we like David mentioned earlier in the we are trying the best. We're figuring out the best ways to I guess remove sections of parks that don't get utilized as much by the public, and that's the reason why you see a few islands that, for example, at Vintage Meadows, they're yellowish and chlorotic. So we're just doing everything to keep it alive and utilizing those water units and bringing them over and transferring them over to the playing fields. Strategizing that way. We did put a budget line item to remove some of these islands and add some decorative mulch, and then figure out the math of how many gallons we're saving for that particular island, and then add some of those gallons into the playing field.
Great. Right. Well, thank you, Hector.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Okay, anything else on that? We'll move on to 5E, the discussion of stop signs at the corner of West First Street and Jefferson.
Okay, we received a request from a resident, and I think Vanessa, you received this request and you asked it to be agendized. If you want to speak to this item.
Is this, there's a couple of things. So we've got a few of these, requests that come in, and on top of this, there was another one that we received over the past weekend. It would be really nice to implement some kind of process for people to submit these, rather than, really be reactive to one person making a request. It would be nice to know if there was some community support behind these requests before city staff has to field them. But that aside, we have a request for, currently there is a two-way stop at First Street and Jefferson. It's West First Street and where it transitions from North Jefferson to South Jefferson. It's currently a two-way stop where traffic on West First Street does not stop. And so the request is to now make that a four-way stop. I have opinions on that. I don't support the request myself, specifically because on the adjacent blocks to this intersection, there is already stop signs on West First Street. But it is a request that came in, and so just bringing it to the Public Works Subcommittee for discussion.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the public? No?
Just a comment.
Okay.
A comment.
Yeah.
Cox.
Bob Cox has a comment.
I travel that frequently because I stay off the Boulevard. I use back streets to get to the vet zone. And I see traffic on West First Street quite a bit. And the ones, there's a stop sign at Washington, which does break up the traffic flow on West First Street. So people coming out of Jefferson, which either direction, does give them an opportunity to make a turn there. So it's not like there's solid traffic going by. So I don't support that and need for a stop sign at Jefferson. No. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would suggest, without any basis to recommend a stop sign, that we just respond, thank them for the correspondence, tell them that looking at our records, there's just no indication of a need for a stop sign at this point, and that will, if they have information that they didn't submit, maybe they want to submit additional facts to help justify it. But at this point, I don't think we should spend a lot more time on it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to 5F, authorized purchase of a mini excavator and associated equipment for utilities department in the amount not to exceed $66,525 plus tax.
Chair, there's a proposal in your in the agenda packet for the purchase of an excavator, this particular excavator, a John Deere. We obtained a quote through what's called Sourcewell. Sourcewell, the JPA bidding that's associated. That the council has adopted a resolution that supports it as a mechanism for obtaining quotes and bids without having to go through the formal process. So generally, what we do see is Sourcewell quotes being very, very competitive. So it meets our procurement requirements. This is an item that we did budget for. We provide additional equipment and tools for our staff to be able to perform work like water main repairs, water leaks, as well as other, general general maintenance work in our utility system. And so just wanted to bring this to the subcommittee for review, and ultimately supported bringing to council for approvals today. Will be on my authority. This request was brought forward primarily for our water department. I don't see Darren here. I don't know, Hector, if you have any thoughts on the benefits of the excavator. I think it was primarily for water, so I'm not sure if it was the park-driven tool. I did want to note we did receive late last week correspondence. I know, Paul, you're on their board, and they are offering some incentives for what they're referring to as equipment that meets pretty strict air quality requirements. So this may be an opportunity to look to see if there's an alternative tool that they would offer that, clean air excavator. I'm not sure if they manufacture those or if they're available yet. But certainly we can take a look.
I think that's important.
Yeah, see if that's we're seeing more and more of these types of equipment being made with alternative sources of energy, electric or some sort of hybrid model. So we could take a look, see if there is an alternative to this that could be procured within the sector. We'll have, I had researched that fully because you have to, there's some work you have to do to kind of determine the vendors that provide the equipment, whether it's a suitable alternative to what's being.
And this is in the budget.
This is in the budget.
Good. Yeah, any questions? Good. I support moving up over again, but I definitely support double checking before we order it and see if there's any potential grant funding to offset the costs. Yeah, that would be very important. Okay. On. We did 5G, so we'll move on to item 6, our standing and continued items. We'll go through these relatively quickly, just for a brief update, starting with the one on the city grant application submittal.
Yeah, happy to give an update, Chair. And Vanessa, Phil, welcome to weigh in. Vanessa and I have been coordinating with the staff at Department of Water Resources. The engineer, Pakiza, and I can't remember her last name specifically, Vanessa, but they've been really ensuring that the scope of work is very detailed. They want a very detailed description of the timing and a number of other things. And Vanessa has been doing the engineering work with Pakiza to make those final modifications. I know we sent in a updated and detailed proposal that identified how we were going to carry out the projects. There was some feedback, Vanessa, and look, I think kind of the final step is to make some final adjustments and then send that back to the state for final approval.
That is what we're working on, is the agreement between the city and Department of Water Resources. And so they're looking for some additional details. We're close, we're about 95%, but I hope to send those back this week to Department of Water Resources. And, there've been a couple of back and forth now. I expect that that will probably be the final draft, and that we should start seeing some forward movement soon.
Great.
Yeah, and I think, Joe, one of the things that you mentioned, that it is so important for this project, it's a $3 million grant. The state requires we require retention from our contractors, but they also require retention, which is 10%. So 10% on 3 million is 300,000 that you won't get until you complete the project. So part of this effort with this timing that Vanessa's been working on is breaking out the 4 projects so that we can close out the individual projects individually and be able to get that retention back on those pieces. So we're not waiting to the very end for the retention on the whole grant amount. So that's part of this effort that they're at. Part of the reason why we're doing this effort is very much refining the timeline so that we can close out portions of the project, get that retention back into, because we're going to be expending the money, the funds to carry out the work, and to be able to get that back in the water enterprise fund as quickly as possible. And so that was actually a favorable strategy that they offered to us to be able to do that, and we took them up on that offer because we think it's, again, so important for the point for our fund balance, because waiting to the very end to get 10% of the funds, it's a big chunk of change. So this will all be detailed in the grant application, and we'll provide the guidance. And like Vanessa said, she's been working hard on it. It's getting very close. It's been a positive relationship. I think again they're eager to get it done, and so there's been a quick turnaround on both of our parts to get this agreement.
Vanessa, do we know what the turnaround time to get the equipment once we have the funds and we're able to place an order? Have we explored that?
No, we haven't explored that. I think, the first phase on some of this is going to be design work, and those details can get worked out in the design phase. That's where you get into kind of the details of the project scheduling and project costs. And so we'll get a better idea of what that looks like during that phase. Typically, when you're working on like an engineer's estimate, there is some outreach to contractors. And so that's an easy dialogue to have with them. What kind of lag time are you guys looking at for some of this equipment?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit worried because I know there's a big backlog in certain pieces of equipment. We're ordering a lot of meters, and I'd hate to see us be 6 or 8 months out to be able to get them in, and that's going to impact our timeline. And obviously the grant does have a sunset date, so I'm hopeful that there's enough, if we run into those delays, that the state will understand and will have some latitude in it. So, but okay, well, thank you for all your work on that, and I'd like to see this stay on for updates in the next meeting. Okay, anything else on that? No. Okay, we'll move on to item 6B, an update on the pickleball court installation. I don't see any ground moving.
Hector and crew, go ahead, Hector.
Yeah. So we did receive a confirmation from Anderson Excavating. We are planning on starting to break ground on August 15th. I think it's Monday. Yeah, Monday, August 15th.
This is concrete date because he was going to be the middle of July.
Yeah, he postponed the work due to his workload with other projects.
Well, just Hector and his crew was able to move all the underground stuff, so that saved us a lot of money having that done in-house. So good job, Hector.
Yeah, excellent job, Hector. Thank you, and tell McGill as well. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we have a set date to break ground from Anderson on 15th.
Yep.
And he's not going to change it.
I had several conversations with him on the phone. He left him several messages, and that's the date that he gave me. I think from our end, we're ready to go. We are just right now we're just going over barricading off the work zone while the project is being performed. Because I know we're going to be just coming around soccer season. So we got to come up with a good plan to still let the little guys go out there and play soccer, and at the same time keep this project going forward.
Great, well, thank you. And would you just follow up with him a week to 10 days before to confirm and remind him that we're very anxious and we're would like to hold him to that no later than August 15th to do the work?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm taking notes right now, so I'm gonna. As a matter of fact, after this meeting is over, I'm planning on giving him a call just to let him know what we discussed today.
Oh, thank you. And the other thing, a question I had, I know at our last meeting, Brad Correll was here, and I know we agreed that there was going to be a meeting. Kevin, you were going to coordinate that with Hector and Brad, talk about signage, security, storage box. Did that occur?
We've been talking to Brad. We're probably going to do it coming up pretty soon, but we have been exchanging ideas over the email, but we haven't met on site yet.
Okay.
Brad's been following up. I've been a little busy, but it's seriously. I don't know that it's not super urgent, but we're definitely it's on the radar, and I know Brad will not.
Well, yeah, I just kind of like to get it finalized. So
Yeah, we just Kevin, we did contact some of our vendors to try to get some storage designs. We also went ahead and talked to Fletcher Fabrication. And then, Kevin mentioned we've been exchanging emails with Brad. He's been very helpful through this whole process. I actually just sent him an email here about 10 minutes ago regarding the storage ideas. So it's going forward, and he's been very helpful.
thank you. Thank you all for all your work on this. I'd like to keep this on the agenda, and I would like to kind of get an overview at our next meeting on what you decided on those items as far as his concerns, the security of the storage box. What you decided. And signage, he had some signage issues he wanted to recommend. So with signage, the notes I had was signage, security, and the storage box are the three areas he brought up.
Yeah, I think fencing works here.
Which was the other one?
Fencing.
Fencing, that's right. Great. Okay, well, thank you. Anything else on that? Any comments for anybody? Move on to item 6C, water supply update, drought response.
Okay, well, we do have a presentation to the council on Wednesday. This is on water rates, not water supply, but just wanted to mention that. We still continue to maintain the stage 4 water shortage emergency. We are really closely looking at whether to bring forward a modification to that emergency declaration or the stage from a stage 4 to a stage 3. What we're really waiting on is pending decision by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commissioner, FERC, on the PG&E request to vary the amount of water that's diverted from the Potter Valley project to Lake Mendocino. Depending if they grant the variance that PG&E requested in full, it could the forecast is it could have a very significant impact on water supply, and if that was the case, we may not want to move from a stage 4 to a stage 3, because right now we're the stage 4 is 35%. Stage 3 is 25%, which aligns with the voluntary drought agreement that council approved. So from that perspective alone, it makes sense to move to stage 3. But with this pending decision, what the regional board is indicating that they might suspend the voluntary drought agreement and go back to health and safety requirements. So we wouldn't want to be in a position to kind of to have to reduce it and then you need to go back. So the decision's kind of pending any day. We're just, everybody's in wait and see mode. So we were kind of targeting the first meeting in August, potentially bring the water shortage emergency forward. But it'll be dependent on whether there's a decision issued and some of the analysis on what impact that's going to have on the water supply of Lake Mendocino and the regional board's response to that. So that's kind of, we're kind of in a holding pattern. We were eager to kind of move it forward, but the advice, and I think it's good advice, is let's wait for the decision so we're not having to reverse decisions that might be made. Even though right now they make sense. For what we're seeing in Lake Mendocino is about a 61% reservoir below target target levels compared to about 31% last year at the same time. So reservoir is in much better shape, but it's in part because of the water that's being diverted from the Potter Valley project in so and the late rains and things have helped this year. So right now, I think we're good, but we continue to message out consistent with kind of the message that the county is putting out in regards to the drought still here and encouraging conservation. And we have seen the most latest analysis did indicate that our residents are over the 2017 to 2019 period, we're about 25% less. So we're on target with our conservation. I mean, it'd be great if it's at 35%, but 25%, I think reducing by a quarter is pretty good in comparison to the 3-year time.
So I'd like to see if maybe Darren can contact Windsor Public Works to see. I read the article regarding the town launches a new water program. And the program it's basically taking recycled water, and I don't think it's a fishery like Hillsburg has. I think it's kind of like our backwash water, where they're going to make it available to the residents at certain hours and go down and fill up to a 300-gallon bucket. They have requirements. It's got to be marked. It's not for drinking, can't be used for certain things, and it's all in the article. But I'd like him to just, if he could just contact me, and that would be something as we get further into potential drought restrictions, where we could offer to our residents to go down, whether it's 100 gallons or 50 gallons. They went down to fill so they could keep shrubbery alive. So if there's a way to do that, I thought it was really innovative. I know Hillsburg has a program, but they have a whole different process. But Windsor just launched that. And the article was in the Press Democrat, July 16th. And it's a pretty good article, and I think it's a good move. Right? Help people preserve their landscape, and I think the more we can do that, the better off. So if we could look into that, maybe we can have that on our agenda for our next meeting, kind of get an update. Is that something we can do? What would it take? Theirs is not going to be very costly other than staff time, but they set it up in a park and they have it from 9 to 2, certain days of the week. You go down, you have to have the container, it's got to be marked. You just go in, prove you're a Windsor resident, fill it up, and then away you go. So, okay, thank you. Like to move on to 6D, update on the Cloverdale Plaza Public Restroom Project. I know that's going to be after Friday Night Live. So where we at?
We have the bid documents ready. There was a pre-con meeting, pre-bid. Three contractors participated. So that was one of the requirements, is you had to participate in order to bid on the project. I don't know the day the bids opening.
The 28th.
The 28th, so that's
Yes, July 28th. So that's let's see, Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday will be the bid opening.
and then once we get the bid, we'll go to award the bid, probably in August to the council. This is to get the the site work done.
This is a site work.
Yeah, and the restroom is under construction now, expected to be delivered in late September or October. So our goal is to have all the site work done, then you can drop it down with the crane and we'll be good to go.
Move it up.
Yeah, so just if you to recap in terms of the process, will be open the bids, do a thorough review, make sure there's nothing missing, and ultimately bring it to council to recommend the contract, council approval, and then we'll part of that, we'll be working on getting bonds and insurance, and so forth. So that takes a little bit of time, especially for bonds, but and with the start date, after the Labor Day.
For the rest, right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's exciting. Some good things. Okay, move on to item 6E. An update on city park basketball courts.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as what David said. We're going to bid on that on August 16th. So the bid documents have been prepared. It's gonna be 2 basketball courts. It's gonna be really a nice project, but yeah, we're planning to go to bid on August 16th, and Mo Engineering provided us pretty aggressive schedule, award the bid in October, August potentially as a council, if we can get all that cleared up, or early September. And I don't know, Hector, if you had any more on that one.
Before you answer, just real quick on the bids, when it goes out to bid on 16th, when's it close? When do they have to have it?
The 18th,
18th.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
September 18th.
August.
August 18th. So they have 2 days?
Hang on a second, I might have that wrong.
That might be a
Yeah, hang on, I think it's probably 30 days.
What's being advertised?
Yeah, you have it, Kevin, and then I think we have it on the schedule there to go into August 24th. We would take it to council for their award during the meeting.
Yeah, he's got here August 16th open bid.
I'll open the bids on the 16th. So
Yes.
they must go out before that. And so open bids.
So. Yes, exactly. Sorry, I think.
No. Open bids on the 16th.
I can send you this email. So.
Yeah, they started, we started advertising July 21st.
Right, and then
Okay.
open bids is 16th. He's got award.
Yep.
Bid on August 24th. The council, I don't know, that might be a little aggressive, but. Mid-September pre-construction meeting, mid-November construction complete.
Good. Excellent.
I'll send this to you.
And once you get that finalized, these things are really nice projects. I'd like to see them in your newsletter that you put out, and just giving the community an update. That these things are in the works, we're working on them. Here's some of our target dates. It's really good things. And it's nice to get some good.
Good
information.
PR is all
Right, yeah, we actually this week we talked about our next Cloverdale Connect article, focusing on all the parks, plaza, restrooms. Of course, we do the painting, the wall, and the basketball court. So providing an update. Also, on the project.
Our city clerk's been working on a really cool new website that's going to be focused on parks, and it's really great. So it'll all kind of come together. To the Cloverdale.
Yeah, we're gonna we're strategizing on the unveiling of the update on our website, and Hector and Mike have been working on it, so it looks great. We'll see that soon.
Very exciting stuff. Good. Anything else on the basketball? Looking forward to that. Thank you guys so much. Okay, we'll move on to 6F, update on the traffic signal light up on turn signal. This is on the flashing yellow, right? The treadway at Cloverdale Boulevard.
Right. It's we still consider kind of trying to optimize the signal. The most specifically what we're working on right now is the yield on yellow. The equipment has been obtained. I had actually received an update that we were going to start the work on last week, and it hadn't started yet. So I think they're finalizing programming. A lot of the work is really just programming the equipment to operate properly. And once that's done, they'll be able to do the install. So I haven't got a firm date on when the install is planned. So I'll work on getting that. It's really at any time it could happen. So I know I'm expecting that to be completed, and it should only take about a week's time for them to actually install the updated lighting.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they could keep us in the loop on their plans or working on that, because it's kind of like we're just, they kind of say, well, next week, and then it's just not. Well, next week's come and gone.
Right.
So they need to kind of get it on their work plan and communicate that so we all can be prepared, but it needs to happen. I tell you, the traffic does back up. There's really absolutely no reason for a lot of these cars to stop because there's nobody coming in.
Right.
So we just need to fix it.
And that's certainly the plan, and I'll
Yeah.
keep after and moving forward. They're really good. So
Yeah.
I think it's maybe just finalizing some programming.
Well, I'm not paying attention. I'm out there.
Comment on that intersection.
Just your name. Sure.
Michael, last name is Dennis. Comment, coming out of the Chevron Station, it seems like you wait forever for that light to allow you to make your right turn if you're heading to the freeway. And on one occasion, I made the right, I mean, I was supposed to. Because it said no right, but I'm like, you guys know that's what I did. Is there an issue with that light, or am I just?
So that's a great question. That particular signal is detected by camera, and so it looks like it's maybe a camera that might nab you if you make it a legal right turn, but it's actually a detection camera intended to detect that a vehicle is there. And the reason why, otherwise it would normally be allowed to right turn on red is because there's an adjacent driveway. If that driveway was not there, then you can make a right-hand turn without waiting for the signal. That's the issue. And
There were no cars coming, excuse me.
Yeah.
Nothing happening, and I'm like, what, I gotta get going, I just put my tank in.
if a right turn can be done safely, but you have to pay this traffic.
Yeah, I'm in the habit of.
I will ask our engineering team, our traffic consultants, if they can take a look at that. It is part of the cycle of those lights, and it's because of the design, it goes through each cycle, and it just takes its time to get through to that cycle. I've experienced the same thing.
I thought it was broken at one point, I mean, okay, there's nothing going on.
But it did detect you, right?
Yeah.
I've tested it a couple times, and it's been, I think it's where you catch it in the cycle.
It did detect. I made my right turn and took off,
Oh, okay.
so it never turned green. It's my.
Well, hopefully we'll get that installed. It's unusual because typically we have in-lane detectors that, and so it's done on a phase cycle when it detects you. So
Thank you to all of you for all the work you do for the city. I don't attend these meetings that often, but thank you, Hector. We've done a little bit.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Do you think next week they'll be starting the work? Is that-
yeah, I'll get a firm update. I had been corresponding today, so I just didn't have a date.
Thank you. Thank you all for all that. Okay, we'll move on. We're update on the auto crosswalk controls for First Street and Super Fair.
Yeah, those have been installed. I think the new audio detection devices are really pretty innovative. You just can, they call it wave technology. You don't actually even have to touch the button, you just wave. But it also vibrates for someone who might be visually impaired. So if they can touch it, when it's vibrating, it's safe to go, but it's got the appropriate chips. There is a median signal in the middle of I guess it would be Citrus Fair Drive along the Boulevard. And the recommendation, is to go ahead and proceed and remove that. It's technically not, considered, safe by current standards to have that detection. But what they're doing to address that is lengthen the amount of time that the audio or the walk signal provides for someone to walk across the street section. And, you know, otherwise what we really need to do is to create an accessible, protected median there, which we don't have currently. So we're going to remove that detection device. So you won't no longer see that hole there, which has actually been kind of an issue for our maintenance team because cars hit it. So that would be one modification, but otherwise these have been successfully installed.
Sure.
ADA compliant.
Yeah, so Michael, this can be removed from the agenda for our next meeting. It's all, it's a completed project. Again, that might be something that you put in your newsletter as well, something that's been accomplished and how it works. Yeah. Okay, item 6H, update on traffic signage requests. A request for a yield sign on Sonoma Avenue. Yes, Sonoma Drive.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's been, to kind of elaborate on the city engineer's earlier comment, you know, we were getting a lot of requests for, you know, making modifications, and what we've seen from when that original request came in, we now see a number of residents with a counter opinion, and so I think that's reflective in the city engineer's comment that, you know, maybe we develop a process so it ensures that there's, you know, any of these requests that come forward for traffic safety improvements, they come with it with some support from the community, so we're not, you know, just responding to maybe one individual request.
So if I remember, and I'm going by memory, which is dangerous, so you can correct me on this one, but the request that he submitted mentioned everybody along Sonoma Drive supported it in his original. It's when we got on to, I guess it was, what is that, Red Mountain? Oh, what's that other street? Clover Springs, thank you.
I live.
Yeah, which opposed it. And so I think what I'd like to just see, and I know our city engineer did take a look at it. I went by it, took a look at it, read all the correspondence. And I think the stop sign should remain. I don't feel that it should be moved. I mean, and I think, you know, what I like to recommend, and I'm gonna open it up, but I just like to recommend that, you know, we write a letter to the people submitting the request that we did take a look at it, that we looked at the whole parameters, and at this point that we feel that the stop sign is warranted and it's going to remain. So, you know, just close the book. I'm sorry, did you have some?
I have a comment on that. That's why I attended the meeting. That's the buddy Bob on to promote support. Anyway, throughout your agenda here, I keep seeing the word pedestrian safety. That's probably why I'm here. I'm the last house in Clover Springs, right at the very end of Clover Springs. Mark Thayer's a neighbor, a lot of good neighbors. I've been there for 10 years. My second time coming back to Clover. I'm staying here. I volunteer writing lots of things for the community. Thank you to all of you for a learning lesson for me here. See what you folks do. Mark had emailed me about his comments and gets into already how
We received them.
another person, Dobie Edmonds, who changed her mind after signing the petition. I know that her comments here too. My own personal comments on this is, I walk daily and hike that park, and I just go up the street. I watch little Jan push her stroller, not stroller, excuse me, the walker, right on that corner, and get over to the other side of the house in the morning, go down the street. And she does that daily. There's people walking, there's bikes, there's so much activity there, not to mention the cars that get parked there. That hurts the visibility for people coming down, which is a hill, by the way, you know, to make the left to get on. Coming out of it, and you're going up, there's cars, there's people coming out of the walkway heading to that Meadow Creek Park. So that's utilized quite a bit. And that, to me, to change a stop sign to a yield sounds ridiculous. I oppose it, whether Mark's my neighbor or not. And it can be very convincing, but, you know, that's where I stand on it. I wanted to make that clear to the
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming.
I would see accidents start to happen as soon as it got dark. I watched people, we had vehicles coming down there, service vehicles that move along there pretty good clip. So they're turning around at the end, cul-de-sac and going back out. We get very good traffic there, more so than I remember at the beginning. So just a little.
Well, good. Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much.
If you wouldn't mind stating your name for the record again.
Absolutely. Michael, my last name is Rumbanis, Roumbanis. I'm sure Mark there would be here, but he's in Europe right now. He's coming home.
Chair, I hear your direction is that, go ahead and respond to the requester that we reviewed it, it's been discussed. We believe the stop sign is warranted and we're gonna continue to keep the stop sign.
That's,
Been there 20 years, I believe. Yeah, approximately.
and if we can communicate that to all the messages that we received, that the decision was made. So we got the emails, so we can just respond to them that we reviewed it and that decision was made. The stop signs will remain in place. Stop sign. Anything else on that? Move on to that, and then we have a stop sign on Champlin North.
Right, I think this, we did receive a letter request from the resident who lives adjacent to this intersection. And the concern in this particular location was the proximity to the schools. And I think what we heard from the subcommittee previously is whether there was enough evidence to support, installing stop signs in this location. If there's any further direction, we'd like to, if we want to keep it as is for now, we'll correspond.
It's really difficult for me to make a judgment on it. I'd like to, look at our engineer to see look at it working with the police department. Is there really any basis? Are there any accident histories? Are we having any complaints of speeding in that area that maybe need to be addressed? I'm not aware of anything. Seems like it's not broken. What changes? I'm inclined to say at this point, stop sign is not necessary without some additional facts that would show that maybe something's changed. But that gets back to these requests. It'd be good to maybe put these on the police subcommittee to kind of look at any history around complaint driven traffic, pedestrian, calling police because of speed, different things going on, and then maybe stop signs aren't the best way to control speed, but it may be some enforcement issues that we need to talk about. So otherwise we're just going to start popping stop signs everywhere, and I don't think. Okay. So that can be removed as well from the, Michael, that could be removed. Staff will send letters and that'll be at the end of that. Update to repair the sidewalk asphalt and the asphalt on the East 2nd next to Eagle Tech. And I know that was done. Thank you so much. That was a big deal. That was a real serious liability.
That's complete. I think we've issued final payment to Regi Construction. I want to appreciate Regi's attention to the neighboring business, work closely with the business owner. And for next steps for us, is our park superintendent, the arborist, is evaluating some trees that would be proposed for that landscape strip. And he's also spoken with the business owner's wife in regards to the tree selection, and I think they're in agreement. And when appropriate, we'll get those planned. We'll probably be Hector, would you say in the fall? Possibly?
Yeah, in the fall, I did speak to Ashley from Cloverdale Nursery, And we're going forward with ordering the trees. We're gonna plant some 2 crepe myrtles and a Chinese pistache, which will match the trees directly across the street. Yeah, we're hoping we can get them down in the fall. I'm also gonna install some root barriers.
Thank you. That's gonna be my question.
Which was not done there, but root barriers to encourage those roots to grow down instead of up towards the concrete.
Thank you so much for that, for the update, and so that can be removed as
Okay.
well. Thank you, that's done. Okay, move down to 6J. Discuss a citywide striping plan and pavement management program. I know been working on that. You put money in the budget. See some results on that.
Yeah, so I'd like to turn this item over to Vanessa. You want to share with Chair the work you've been coordinating with W-Trans on their original proposal?
So outside, you have to check and make sure I'm not on mute. Outside of the, overall kind of management plan, if you will, I know that it's of interest to really update and, freshen up the striping on some arterials. And so initially, I think it was, I want to say it was last February, we looked at a proposal to update the striping on several arterials, and that was somewhere in the tune of about $65K. And so now we've asked for a somewhat revised proposal. It's very preliminary. It needs to be formalized, but essentially cutting the budget in half and really just focusing on Cloverdale Boulevard. But we are still looking at somewhere in the range of, I want to say about $35K. And so, again, we don't, 32K, 31,950 is where she's at now. But that would essentially do plan specifications and estimate for some length along South Cloverdale Boulevard. And so if the subcommittee is amenable to that, we could move forward with getting a final proposal and either bringing that forward for further discussion or getting some movement on that and sending it to City Council.
So that money would only give us paper plans.
Correct.
No ink on the ground.
That's correct.
So do we really need that? I know we've had this conversation before. I mean, the lines are in place and we just want to freshen the lines. We're not moving them, we're not changing them. Crosswalks are in place. We want to freshen them. I know Councilmember Walter also had the same questions and concerns that we're spending an awful lot of money that could be going toward actually marking. So I'm trying to kind of put my arms around, that's a lot of money that have put quite a bit of ink on, or ink, not ink, paint, thank you, paint on the ground. Is that necessary, I guess?
And I think the tricky thing is that the boulevard in particular is a very high traffic area, as we know. A lot of safety concerns there for the general public, much less, contractors working on the job. It's going to take some traffic control. And on top of that, the striping is thermoplastic, which is a little bit trickier to lay down. That being said, coordinating with our neighboring municipalities, I believe if memory serves, I can't remember, I believe it was Petaluma, does an annual striping specification. And so maybe outside of plans, it's, really just kind of a specification that's attached to a map, enough to at least send the project out to bid. And, whether, reaching out to the traffic consultant, this is their approach. It is possible that we could negotiate that and see if the traffic consultant could, forego on the plans, maybe develop some specifications, and we really just do a map. But that would really kind of limit the design work, and it really essentially then becomes a maintenance of existing striping. So if there's any areas that you're looking at that may require different striping, some other kind of turn lane configuration, that's a little bit outside of the scope of the maintenance, just the maintenance part.
And again, help me with this, but I thought that's what we were talking about is maintenance to refresh it because it's so faded, missing, the blot dots are missing throughout different core areas. I think there's two different things going on here. And, we allotted $200,000 to do the striping citywide. And it's really hard when I see 32,000 going for a piece for just Cloverdale Boulevard. And it's just so we're spending a lot of money and I'd rather see it go to paint. Because it is a maintenance. If we're going to do modifications, I certainly support. We have to go out and get the design and the change, but I'm struggling figuring out why we need to do that when it's all there. It just needs to be fresh. So I'd like to see us take that approach.
Okay.
I'd like to get as much done with the money we budgeted that we can, see the results on the ground.
Understood.
Great. Any comments? Okay, very well. Thank you so much for this. And we'll keep this on there and we'll keep track of it. Okay, we'll move on to 6K, an update on Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. I think we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, the real updates, we're really just waiting to see what the first decision is on the variance from requests submitted by PG&E. So that's really key. Not much action is happening in terms of relicensing right now. There's a lot of back and forth between the FERC and PG&E on how what's going to be the status of the project.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to item 6L. You see annual SB1 project status update on planned improvements.
Okay, well, we just completed the 4th Street reconstruction project. That was our major SB1 funded project that took us, about 3 years, well, almost 4 years worth of funding to be able to complete. They save up enough money in the program, which the program does allow for to complete that. Council has identified, the addition of the Tarman area as the kind of a priority area for future SB1 funding. And Vanessa, am I correct? You submitted the updated SB1.
Yeah, I want to say that was Clark
Okay.
Avenue.
Clark within the Tarman tract.
Okay, perfect. Yes.
Right. So we're at this point, it's the funding required to make those improvements are pretty significant in comparison to what we received in terms of SB1 revenues. And I think we'll be banking those for a couple of years before we are able to bring forward a project unless we can, utilize other funds, put it into something that is actually, constitutes a project. But as of now, we don't really have the Clark Avenue permits are in excess of 6 figures, and so it's something we need additional funding for.
So let me just ask, we have some streets that are relatively new in the scheme of things. When I say new, 20 to 25 years, even 30, that are starting to break down. And would it not make sense that we look at trying to salvage those streets and start slur seal and start trying before they deteriorate to a point where they have to be fully removed? I know we have streets that need to be fully removed, which is a big dollar item. But by the time we have enough money to fix one, we're going to have others that are following suit. And we need to kind of focus, I think, trying to salvage some of these that are starting to get to that line where we can preserve the life of them, maybe another 15, 20 years.
Absolutely. And I think we have this effort that's being largely funded by grant to prepare the citywide, it's called PTAP, report, where they'll go and they'll do the assessment of all the pavement conditions. So we'll, we're expecting that report by early fall, and that will help inform will provide the data around which roads, what conditions and what are the appropriate maintenance requirements. So hopefully that'll provide us the information with which to give us to help inform whether we want to prioritize certain roads for overlays versus what will require more complete reconstruction. So I don't know, Vanessa, from my perspective, we're really relying on that PTAP report to give us the data to again be able to answer Chair Paula's question. And of course it's within council purview to say, sure, hey, we really want to, let's do this.
There's a balance call.
Right.
It makes no sense to save 5 years to redo 2 streets and have 8 more that need to be done, because that could have been avoided had we maintained them. So I really think we really need to look at all that. I take lots of walks around and I see a lot of what I consider newer streets in 25-year-old subdivisions that are cracking and they're starting to spread. And I'm like, boy, it's just going to continue to deteriorate unless we put a plan together to kind of start maintaining these streets. So I'm looking forward to that study that's being done. Okay, so.
I'll comment
Yeah,
on
please, yeah.
those who build upon Bob Cox here. Part of Foothill between Brookside and Cherry Creek. That part of Foothill is a very rough surface and
It
it's
is.
deteriorating rapidly to the point where it's wearing tires down. So I totally agree that some sturdy slurry people there would help immensely.
So I really think we need to try to look at what the life expectancy of some of the newer streets looks like, because some of them are, a couple, 5 years down the road, they're going to need to be redone. So if we can get in front of that, and like Bob mentioned, I think we're going to be well ahead of the game. So, okay, thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on to the update on the airport capital improvement program.
No real updates on this item, Chair. We've submitted our draft CIP, 5-year CIP to FAA for review. We haven't received any comments back. It's fairly consistent with past CIPs. The next key project on the list is just the drainage improvements for area between the landing strip and the taxiway. And the key issue there was just resolving the outflow device, because it would be necessary to put that into in the adjacent creek, and there's environmental concerns. And so that was our next item, to be funded with an environmental analysis of that outfall.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Move on. Update. This is 6N update on 6 acres mutual water company pre-annexation process.
Yeah, so this is the current effort to prepare improvement plans for the 6 acres project area. Is in the works. The state has approved what they call a technical assistance work plan. They are funding the preliminary engineering to make the necessary improvements to extend water and sewer to the residents. Their current time frame indicates 90% design documents due by June 2023. So those are all in process. We continue to monitor. There will be some discussion around the annexation process, whether the city is the lead or if it's a property owner submittal. So we may be bringing, we'll be discussing that further with the 6 acres team that's been provided by the state and LAFCO to see if there's a recommendation on an approach.
They do have us here a little bit in the work to see the work plan. Assist 6 acres and City of Cloverdale prepare required materials to initiate a process to annex 6 acres into the city. So they have us listed here on the work plan a little bit, but we'll work that out.
Okay, any questions? All right, thank you for that. Okay, 6.0, update on Rule 20A.
The Rule 28, this is a reminder of the undergrounding utilities, and really the next step is to determine an area that is within the funding provided that we can develop a project and then do the necessary formation documents for the district to fund the improvement. So
We did have a discussion at council a few years ago. What was it, 4th Street, or they wanted, or Second Street? The problem is there's like 800,000 in there, and it really doesn't, it's one hole underground, or it's small work. But we do,
It would be nice to tie it into that we're going to maybe do some work on with underground utilities at the same time where you can, collaborate between different fundings to make something big happen. Using, some of that measure of 28 funds coupled with being able to replace a water main or something at the same time and, fix a bad road, couple all those into the same pot.
yeah,
It could maybe
do something,
it's just a thought, because if we're gonna tear up because we have a bad road and we need to fix a pipe, and but yet we got overhead, maybe that might be an area we can, kind of consolidate some of the funding to help pay, get more done.
well, this is definitely something we're tracking, is on our radar, and if we get a recommendation from council that really pursue this, we'll definitely do it, or otherwise look for opportunities where we can.
Well, that's what I'd like to suggest, is we look for opportunities that we're gonna be doing work and how we can then come back to council with a recommendation that says, here's a plan, we can accomplish X, Y, and Z using funding from between Rule 20 and.
we have to form a district, so we have to identify a geographic area where we're going to spend that money. So we have to, we have to put all the pieces moving together and figure out a good spot for that.
All right. Thank you for that. We'll move on to 6P, an update on the First Street Crocker Bridge pedestrian improvement project.
Okay, council approved a grant deed for right of way to the county. That document has been recorded. So that's in place, and understand that the county continues to make progress on the design for the project. And we've made a standing request from the county public works director that once they're available, to provide the proposed or draft design to the city for review and comment. So we're just waiting for, and I know they're aggressively trying to move the plans forward. Because it's grant funded, so they're under a timeline for grants. So we're just continuing to monitoring, and we have the year public works director. So I know as soon as they're ready for public review, they'll share this with us.
Great. Any questions?
You just have a good person in place now with Johanna. It's gonna get done.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah. All right. Perfect. All right. Thank you for that. Last item under this 6 is Q, update on broadband funding and CPUC.
All right, well, the league has identified that there is available funding opportunity for local governments for broadband with the kind of the underlying principle for the funding is that you support access to broadband to underserved communities. That's the kind of the basis for the funding. In that regard, the county is actually kickstarting an effort to develop a strategic plan. I was on a call with county representatives and I expressed what our interest was as reflected in our discussions about being able to provide broadband access to, particularly members in our school kids that don't currently have access at home. Also for resiliency, because as we saw during the wildfire events, many of our residents experience loss of internet service, so having some kind of redundancy, and the addressing greater access for the areas immediately outside the city that maybe aren't in close proximity. So I think the county's effort to develop this strategic plan can be really helpful. And they're from what my sense was that they're really seeking our collaboration, and then they're just now kickstarting it. So, and there's these other efforts that are ongoing, so to kind of bring them all under one umbrella, so we can really develop a plan. And it seems like it's for an individual city to kind of take it on. It's tough because it's really about regional, county-wide infrastructure. And to have these networks built, we can build endpoints, but that doesn't do a lot to have the service coming to it. So, anyway, I'm continuing to track that and look at the funding that's provided by the league and see if there's opportunities for us to kind of kickstart our own effort. And there might be advantage partnering with this county effort to make sure that our interests are represented. Of course, there is the RAND board that seems to be an open seat available.
Yeah, nobody seems to want to do it. Something, I don't know, they apply. Okay, well, I know there's a lot of potential grant funding out there for broadband, for state, should be. But now, if you had an opportunity to reach out to any of the grant consultants and try to get something in place where we can have somebody monitoring what our needs are and to alert us. So we did budget some funding for that. It's really important because I get a lot of these from consultants emails through the city address here that there's money available, and I realize there's a lot of hoops, but we really need to get our name in for some of this stuff and work as a team, because I'm happy to reach out to our legislators as well, get letters, and try to.
Right. Well, we haven't procured the services of grant writer yet, but it's an area we can look at. I think it's going to be, what we kind of need to put some thought into. What do we want to apply for?
Well, I think we want to be notified. We may not apply, but I think anything dealing with infrastructure, dealing with water, obviously sewer, anything dealing with blacktop, anything dealing with buildings, like a new police facility where we may be able to access funding. I mean, I think we just want to have somebody looking for us to say, hey, there's a potential over here, public safety in this area. And this is what the requirements, and we can see if it matches what we're looking for. There's so much of this, and I get a lot of them from the federal government. I'm reading that we're fighting. There's going to be quite a bit of influence for public safety for different things, and I'm not sure that would actually carry over facilities, but it could, and maybe at least partially, like an EOC center and those kinds of things. So I just really think it's important, and I know everybody on our staff's really busy, so we need somebody who sees these. That's what they do for a living. Says, oh, no, they're looking for this and this. Send the email, and then we can talk. figure it out. That's something we want to go after. There is a lot of money. I know it's short-lived, but just need to try to get it. Okay, anything else on that? Okay, so future agenda items. The only thing is, we already talked about, I'd just like to have Darren, if you could, follow up with Windsor and maybe talk a little bit about that. Potential of making water available through the irrigation. Anything for the good of the order?
To offer thank you to the city for providing some waste receptacle for the vet hall. I was pleasantly surprised to see them sitting in the club room this morning. Fortunately, we have the National Guard doing some work over there this week. And so I think we're gonna get them to install them.
Great.
So I want to say thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to thank Hector and Craig for coordinating that and getting them delivered right away. We just wanted to check with Johannes, make sure he was okay, because I know they're doing the path for the flag, so it sounds like you got that all coordinated and have a nice recycle can and a nice garbage can that matches the.
It's funny, that bench that sits there on the corner, you think it's kind of into it. It's busy all the time. People just sitting there, what the world go by. And so this is a nice facility for them. Thank
Glad
you.
we were able to have those ready for you. The fence.
All right. We will adjourn till our next meeting, which would be, David, you have that date? I didn't write it down.
Mike, you got that date?
The 23rd? Tuesday, the 24th.